shortening.
Okay.
We've had this discussion. And hard margarine.
Okay. There's no butter in it.
You can make it with all butter.
Okay.
If you can't get anything as a substitute for lard, I think it'll just be much richer.
Why is lard better?
It makes a light, flaky
Oh,
pastry.
that's how you get the flaky pastry.
Yeah. Okay. So you want half quantities of fat to flour.
Mm-hmm.
And with this formula, it means you can make any amount. So you could make a pound of pastry or half a pound. I'm going to make half a pound.
So 1 to 2 ratio?
Yes, so I'm going to weigh out 8 ounces of flour.
So this is all in imperial measurements.
It is. Now I want 4 ounces of fat. And I use mostly lard, so I would aim to use about 3 ounces of lard.
This is good. I'm working on my fractions.
Okay. And
1 ounce.
Ounce of margarine.
Now, what did they do in the days before margarine?
They probably just used all lard.
Oh.
Okay, so that's 4 ounces. Now the secret to making pastry is that everything should be cold. So
Right.
you don't want to take the fat.
Including your heart.
Yes, and your hands.
And your hands.
And your house. That's a problem for me. Okay, so you don't want to take your fat and your stuff out until you're ready to use it. I'm making a cake where you take it out in advance. So
leave them in the fridge until the last minute.
Yeah. Now, if you haven't got a food processor, you're going to rub it in by hand. So what I do is just chop it a little bit, save some of the rubbing.
Looks like an egg.
Yeah. And the secret to pastry is the less you work on it, the better.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you also want to have cold hands. And then you're just going to rub. It's going to
that looks fun.
with your fingers and rub it lightly, lifting it up to incorporate some air into it. You don't want to smoosh it in, you want to use your fingertips very lightly. This is nearly done. I want you to see that it's not done enough, because you might think you had got to it, but there's still some lumps of fat in there that you can see. It doesn't quite look like breadcrumbs yet.
Okay.
Okay.
And you want to stop before it looks like breadcrumbs?
No, you want to keep going.
Okay.
Don't stop now.
Don't stop now.
You might think, oh, that's good enough.
Uh-huh. But you would be wrong.
You would be wrong. Sometimes towards the end, I just rub it lightly between my hands.
Mm-hmm.
It's already almost like breadcrumbs, and you can get the last little bits incorporated.
Mm-hmm.
As you can see, it still sort of falls really lightly. It's quite fine. You don't want to keep going with it now, or it'll start to go into a nasty, smudgy, lumpy, it'll all start to come together.
Okay.
So the next critical stage is you're going to add the water to it.
Mm-hmm.
The water should be cold. You can either run the tap until it's really cold, or you can put a little bit of water in the fridge, particularly if the weather's rather hot.
Ah. It is a sweltering 12 degrees today, so...
Yeah. Now, the ratio, this is very clever, is you have 1 teaspoonful of water for each ounce of flour.
Okay.
So no matter how many ounces of flour, you can always work out how many teaspoonfuls.
Mm-hmm.
So how many ounces of flour did we have?
Was it 2?
No.
No? 4?
No.
3?
8.
8.
8 ounces of flour.
Okay.
So, you want a good big teaspoon. 7, and I'm going to put just like half a one in for the 8, because I don't want to put too much water in, and I can always add a bit more.
Mm-hmm. It's a good life lesson right there.
Yeah. To incorporate the water into the flour, you're going to get a big old knife.
Is that a sharp knife or?
No, it's just a table knife.
Oh, okay.
It's one that your father stole from a restaurant at one time. And you're going to just lightly mix. And you can see it starting to form into lumps.
Now these lumps are about the size of kind of cheese curds?
Yes. And there's still some dry stuff around the edge. So
Are you cutting through it with the knife or using it more as a spoon, kind
Almost
of?
like a spoon. I'm sort of smushing it ever so slightly as I
Okay.
go.
So you're using a bit of intuition here with
Yes,
it.
a little bit of a cut and a push, cut and a push, cut and a push, and keep moving it around.
Yeah.
It's not fully coming together yet, so I'm actually going to put the rest of that teaspoon of water in it. If you put too much water in pastry, it comes out really hard
Oh.
and nasty. It's starting to come together quite nicely. And this is something that you will just learn from experience. But generally speaking, it's like cutting wood. You can't make it longer again if you cut off too much. So you put in too much water, you can't take it out. I mean, I suppose you can always add a bit more flour, but it won't really come out quite right. So I'm going to do a little test here. I'm going to see whether, if I take my hands now, will it form into a nice ball that won't be too crumbly when I...
And too crumbly is kind of
crumbly
a
is very hard to
subjective.
roll.
Very hard to roll.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think this needs just a little tiny bit more water. Just a couple of drops.
So where do you think most people go wrong with their savory pastry making?
With their savoury pastry maker, I think they work it too much and they put in too much water. You don't want to warm it up and you don't want to work it too much. You want that air and fat combination.
So no bathroom breaks. You want to have all your stuff out and ready to go.
Yeah. Right.
No dawdling in the kitchen.
Nope. So now we've formed it together into a ball, and you're not going to knead it like you might bread. You're just going to work it a little bit to bring it together into a nice smooth dough.
Gorgeous.
Like so. Now, a lot of people would now take this dough and rest it in the fridge because it will come out better, but because I want to show you...
And by rest it in the fridge, you mean wrap it in saran wrap?
Wrap it in saran or wax or something and leave it in the fridge for an hour or so. And what that does is it allows the gluten fibers in the flour to relax, and so your dough isn't going to shrink as much when you come to use it.
But for the purposes of television, we're skipping that step.
We're skipping that step because I actually never bothered with it. So, rolling pin. You want a nice, good wooden rolling pin. And if you've used it regularly, you just need a little bit of flour on it. And you've got your flour on your work surface. So now you don't want too much pastry on the counter or pastry board if you've got such a thing, because of too much flour. It's just enough so that it won't stick. You don't want to add more flour to your pastry. And you're going to keep moving it. See what I'm doing? I'm rolling a little bit. Turn it, roll it.
Turning it 90 degrees.
Yes, and that's just to stop it sticking.
Okay.
And I've got a bit here that's kind of got a bit damp and it's sticking, so I'm going to put a little bit more pastry on my rolling pin so it's not sticking. And you want to roll lightly.
And what do you do if you were to get a tear down the middle?
Oh, see, there's a little bit of a tear forming here, and you can just squidge it back together again.
Like new.
Yeah. And as it gets bigger, it gets a bit harder to turn, and it's sticking a little bit. So I'm just going to take a little bit more flour. Put that under.
Would you ever toss it up like a pizza dough?
No, doesn't want to be tossed up like a pizza dough.
And you never flip it over either, do you?
No. And if you're making something like a pie or a mince pie that's going to have a crust on it, this is the top side because it's going to be the smoothest and nicest.
Oh.
I'm going to look and see if there's enough left around the edges that it would come up there.
Ah, right, it has to come up the edge too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So obviously it's not big enough yet. Well, I think that's going to do. Okay. So the art picking up pastry, you're going to put your rolling pin about 2/3 of the way along. You're going to lift the pastry up, supporting. There's a bit of a crack here, so I'm just supporting that. I'm going to lift it over, and then I'm going to lift it, roll it, lift it, lay it over the edge, and roll it out.
Look at that, stunning.
Yeah. And then you just gently.
And you're going in with the side of your finger?
Yeah, just use your knuckle. And tuck it in. So. Now again, if I'd made more pastry, it would have been more sticking up over the edge. And this bit here is a little bit low.
Can you borrow some pastry
Yes,
from another?
exactly.
Okay.
So you can take a little bit of pastry from here.
The pastry bank.
Like so, and a little tiny bit of water.
Glue it on there.
Glue it on.
They'll be none the wiser.
They will be none the wiser. This is a fluted dish, so you can go around and push it into the
Ah, okay.
thingies.
Now, is it meant to come over this rim here?
No.
No.
Nope. You want to make sure you get it down well, because pastry will shrink when you cook.
Okay.
So I just actually, I don't know if you can see what I'm doing here. I'm just giving it a little push right down.
Okay.
So it's going to go
yeah.
right down into the base. Otherwise it'll just shrink. And so then what you're going to do is you're going to cut this off. And if you cut it off and it shrinks too much, you're only going to end up with the pastry halfway up the rim. Now on Great British Bake Off, I've seen people just leave it and cook it like this and then trim it afterwards.
Oh.
I've never tried that, and I sort of think when it's cooked it might crumble. So, right, this is the really fun part. Take your knife and hold it against the edge at a little bit of an angle. So you don't want to cut it completely. You could go and cut it completely flat. If you cut a little bit of an angle, you're still going to leave, see there's a little bit still above the top? So that's going to give a bit of room for shrinkage.
Probably a pretty standard recipe, right?
Very standard.
What else might other people add to it that you don't?
Salt.
Oh.
Some people would add salt to it. And I say some people make it with butter. There. One lined dish.
Are you going to blind bake it now?
I'm not going to blind bake it
Okay.
now, because I am going to... I can show you what we do to blind bake it. Did I do that?
Yeah.
So blind baking is something that you do if you want to have crisp pastry with some sort of filling. So if you're making a lemon meringue pie, you would blind bake. If you're making an apple pie, you wouldn't bother with that because you're going to put pastry on top. It doesn't matter if the bottom gets a bit soft.
Okay.
But for a quiche, any sort of a tart, you want to blind bake it.
This is to prevent it from getting soggy?
Yes. You don't want a soggy
Don't want
bottom.
a soggy bottom.
So you can use foil, or you can use wax paper or parchment paper. And
Newspaper?
no. And then for blind baking, you can get baking beans, or you can sacrifice some chickpeas or anything else. I mean, for years, I just used some old soybeans that you sure would eat when you were little.
But those are
These are ceramic.
ceramic baking beans.
These are granite baking beans. And they fell out of the container in Francis's cart. You still occasionally find one rattling around inside it. So you just need to cover the bottom. Like that. If I was going to bake it, I would have preheated the oven to about depending on how hot your oven, 375 or 400. So the pastry goes into a fairly hot oven. So you'd want to take it out of the fridge and put it straight into a hot oven. And I would bake it for about 15 minutes. And then I would look to see how done the pastry was. It doesn't have to be completely done, because then you're going to take the beans out, put it back in the oven to let it finish cooking. The beans are just to stop the pastry rising up. You made such lovely light pastry that it'll all go poof up, and there's no room for the filling. So you want the beans are to keep it from rising too much. There you go, ready to go in the oven.